So welcome back, and this is still the Precious Morning Show. You're watching me, Esther Hadassah, and it's time for the expert segments. Every Tuesday we do it on the morning show. Today we have car care. Car care. How well do you know cars? How well do you know how to maintain them? Last week we started a very interesting discussion on the maintenance of your car. That's the mechanical maintenance of your car. And today we are going to continue that discussion with our very affable and capable Mr. Emmanuel Avumi of car care. He's a car care expert and the CEO of Cecil Consult. If you need anything, just go to him. About your cars, it's sorted. Welcome, Mr. Emmanuel.
Thank you.
I nearly said Mr. Cecil, but I'm permitted.
I'm cool. I'm cool with that.
So, Mr. Cecil, last week we started a discussion on the mechanical maintenance of the car. For the sake of those who couldn't watch last week, can we just go through that briefly, then move to the transmission system of the car today?
Okay, good. I think this whole program become very important to car owners, drivers for that matter, with the view that what you drive, you should be able to have a visualized knowledge of what you are driving and managing on the road.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're carefully trying to go through the various stages of what constitutes the car, such that when you are behind the steering wheel or you own that vehicle and you are managing it, you have a fair idea of the various stages. So it's very critical. Those following should follow carefully and be able to understand the various stages as we break them down. So last week, for instance, we started with the power system of the vehicle. Now, the vehicle, as we understand, is constituted with various units. We spoke about the exterior, the interior. We came to the mechanical, which we are on now. The mechanical stage have various phases to it. So we're going to run through those various phases across the weeks ahead of us. And so that you can get to understand what you are handling on the road, with the view that when you have a problem, you'll be able to visualize or imagine where the problem might be coming from. And so that is also why the maintenance aspect is key. So you avoid a problem because you don't want to run into that problem. And so we're working through it. And so we spoke about the power system that constitutes the engine, which generates the power. Now, that engine has quite a number of units bringing together to make it function. And so we spoke about the cooling system, the lubricating system, the fuel system. We spoke about the electrical system, the electronics, and all that to be. Now, when this power is generated, it must be transmitted for the vehicle to eventually get into motion. What leads to this? That is what we term the transmission system. So all the components involved in getting the vehicle into motion is termed the transmission system. The power can be generated by the engine and its auxiliaries. But how does that power convert into motion? It is the transmission system that converts the power into motion. Now, the transmission system then constitutes of what we call the clutch system. Then we have the drive shaft or the propeller shaft. Then we have the gearbox, which converts the power into the various speeds and torques that the tires require. So the power comes from the clutch to the gearbox, then to the drive shafts, then eventually to the drive wheels. Now, these units need maintenance. And so, for instance, in the gearbox, there is what we call the transmission fluid. The gearbox, we have two kinds. We have the automatic, we have the manual. We even have the semi-automatic. Okay, so we have about four different types.
That's depend on the car you're using.
Depend on the car you're using, but most often, the most common ones we have on our roads are the manual and the automatic.
Okay.
Good. Now, the automatic, for instance, uses fluid to function, and that fluid needs maintenance. So what happens is after a number of mileage covered, you need to visit your mechanic for it to be flushed out and replaced. But you have people use their automatic cars and that is it.
it.
Once it's in motion, that's it. And even with the manual gearbox, you also have gearbox lubricant in it, which also require that time in, time out, you flush it and replace it. Because as it functions, there are particles of debris that are dropped into it, get it contaminated, and it loses its viscosity. That means the rightful concentration of oil that can really give you that protection. Exactly. And so these things require maintenance. So it's advisable you always see your technician to advise you as to when you need to be checking these units on your car. Now, when we get through,
before we move there, can you give us a time frame where you should be checking? Maybe 3 months, maybe a month, maybe 6 months, maybe a year.
There are various time frame as related to various manufacturers, to various vehicles. So usually you can get that very well through the manual on the vehicle or a specialized technician for a particular car. So that is why visiting the technician or mechanics are very, very important. Just don't hold the car to yourself. You need experts. It's just like when your health is bad, you need a doctor to be able to prescribe. You don't go to just the chemist or pharmacist and just take your own medication. Get a technician, a specialized technician who is specialized with your brand, make of vehicle to advise as to what specifically the manufacturer has advised to be done on your car. Then you'll be on the right track in maintaining and caring for your car. So I wouldn't want to give out one recommendation that might pertain to a particular car, which might not pertain to another. So as a consultant, I'm speaking to those who don't have much idea about car care to have this idea that to care for your car, if you don't have that brief knowledge, see a specialist.
If you're saying see a specialist, that reminds me of something someone once told me about he having a problem with his car horn, and he took it to should I call it wayside mechanic to fix it, and he went to his water tank. It was working there. So he just had this foreknowledge that now it's about my horn, it's not about my water tank. So he had to take his car from there and drove it to a car, and they used a tester, a machine. They just put it in a car and they identified where
the problem was.
Which kind of mechanics or which kind of what do you call professional? Because everybody now, you go to everybody's backyard and there's a workshop there.
I think one of the factors you can use to want to determine a professional, you get to that garage, want to speak to whoever is in charge, have a chat with a person to get the person's foreknowledge of the trade or the craft. That can give you that first-hand information as to whether you are dealing with the right person. And I think the kind of education you are giving to the audience now is very, very key. As they begin to understand the various functionalities of the vehicle, when they have a particular car, as they speak to that technician, depending on the feedback they get, can give them an idea, I'm speaking to the right person. So with this person having his horn giving him problem, and the person started working on the water tank, immediately will raise an alarm. You need to stop it immediately. And so that is why, for also the sake of the maintenance history of the car, it's very good you have a particular technician who is always caring for the car. If it gets faulty somewhere on the way, if you can, either you get the technician to come and fix it, or you tow it to the technician. It might be costly, but at the end of the day, it will save you. So we should adopt specific technicians or particular technicians to be maintaining, or garages to be maintaining our cars for us. It's very, very crucial.
Okay, so back to...
Good. Now, running through the transmission system, we spoke about the gearbox, its maintenance. Now, on the drive shafts or the propeller shaft, there are also what we call universal joints, certain joints that couples it finally to get to the wheels. And such joints require lubrication. Sometimes you have what we call grease. We grease those units to stop them from friction. Okay, such greases sometimes splash out or become loose. They lose their viscosity, and so timely time out, they need to be replaced.
How will you know that the
It's run out.
grease is,
Usually, it's
grease is
advisable,
running
since
out?
we are very familiar with changing our oil, and we have certain time frames in going to check our change our engine oil. It's advisable you always prompt your technician, and usually the professional ones do it. They will go through and check all these units. If any they realize the need for it, they actually re-grease it. But the unprofessional ones will just probably just stay on to changing your oil and you go away.
Yeah.
If you meet such persons, prompt them. Kindly check my transmission system where we have the greasing units, and check if there is enough grease, okay, in those couplings. Now, then we get finally to what we call the ties. Okay, we have the hubs as well, which also require timely checkup, because we have some greasing components over there, like the ball bearings, that carries the shafts. They also require greasing. And then we finally get to the ties. The tie is the final unit that puts the power on the track. So your ties must also be checked. And we have what we call tie rotation. Okay, the ties wear differently at different sides as you drive along. And so it's advisable that for any other time, that means when you change your oil once, by the next time you are changing oil, it's advisable you do what we call tie rotation. They interchange the position of the ties to ensure that you have an even worn-out tie that can stabilize the car on the road. And so when you see a specialist like that, those who change the ties, they've also been specially trained to know how to reposition the ties underneath your car. So when you take your car to a vulcanizer, for instance, after a period of usage, you will request for tie rotation, and they'll do exactly that for you. And then you also need to check your alignment and then your wheel wobbling. Alignment, when you experience the car dragging you to one side, especially when you leave the steering slightly and you notice a drag to a side, that means you might need an alignment. So you need to see the alignment specialist to get it corrected. And then we have what we call tie rotation. Yes.
With alignment, how does that affect the car?
Good. What happens is, once it's pulling you off, it can affect even the tie wearing on one side. Okay, and it can also cause an accident, because you have constant drag to a particular side, and so it affects manageability of the vehicle on the road. And so it's not a comfortable situation to live with. And so once you start experiencing that, you need to get it checked. Okay. And then we have the wheel balancer. At times, running through a certain speed, usually high speed, you will experience your steering wheel wobbling very violently. But when you slow down, it seems to stop. What happens is that maybe the ties that are underneath the car doesn't have the right weight distribution. And so when you go for wheel balancing, they are able to pinpoint where weights are required, such that the tie can spin smoothly, even at high speed. And so once you experience something like this, you need to see your tie alignment or balancing expert. They correct that for you and you are fine.
Okay. Is it advisable to personally go to the a car shop or wherever they sell car parts and just go and buy your car ties, or you need a professional to do that for you?
Most of the vehicles have recommended brand of ties. In the absence of that, we have other brands that can equally suit. For instance, there are some brands that cost, I wouldn't want to mention brand names. If they want to, they should come and see you for sponsorship.
That's it.
That costs like 1,500 for a particular dimension of a tie. Another brand with the same dimension could cost you on the market for, let's say, 800. Okay, that probably should give you an idea of durability and suitability. And so we have different variants of ties. So for instance, we have situations where we have snow ties brought into the country and we use them underneath our cars. Such ties have not been designed for hot environments of this nature. So you fix this sometimes at high speed, you could have that whole tire peeling on the surface of.
Oh, I've seen that a couple of times.
Exactly. Because it can't withstand the heat. It's not been designed for heat, but for cold region. So there are certain specifications. Even tires have expiry dates. They have expiry dates on them. They have inflation limit, how far you can inflate it to. So there are a whole lot of information on how to get the right tire for your car and how to even manage the tire. That is why you just don't have to get rid of experts. It's very, very important.
Okay, so I was asking a question earlier on how often you should change or you should grease. And also, let me add this question.
Yeah.
How often should you also change your car tires? Should you wait to the point where it gets best, or should you wait to the point where it's totally damaged before you think of changing your car tire?
Naturally, we have what we call gauges. We have a gauge that is used to test how low or worn out a tire can go. There's a limit, and usually in Europe they ensure that very well, and that's why we have much of such tires we call home use in our system, because that means it's gotten to the gauge stage where it is not advisable to use on the road. But for maybe economic reasons, we tend to accept them in our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we accept it, then what it means is that we don't have to let it go flat. You sometimes get a car tires run out flat on the surface and we're still using it. At least for your own safety, you need a grip. Those threads you find on the surface of the tire are safety materials or units that have been designed to ensure that you have positive grip on the road, even within rainy times. And so when you observe your own tire to realize that since we are not going by standards, if we were really going by standards, most of the home use tires should not even be accepted in this country. But since our system probably doesn't go with much standard, but for your own safety, it's advisable once you realize the tread is just getting close to the tire, you have to change it. It might still getting you along, but for your safety.
Okay, before you come to the number of times we should grease, let me quickly open the phone lines, then we come back to that. Thank you. If you're still watching, this is the Precious Morning Show. We are talking about the mechanical maintenance of cars. How often do you maintain it? 0207100001. Mr. Cecil is here to answer all your questions. Anything that you don't understand about cars, he is a car care expert. And he's here to teach you, to educate you on how to maintain your car. But Mr. Cecil, I've noticed something about, I don't know whether it's just Ghana, okay? But I've noticed something about drivers down here that you never go to the mechanic shop to, for lack of a better word, check up on your car till something has gone wrong.
Yeah.
How bad is that?
It's that bad. It's because it's a societal attitude, if I should say, that is migrating into every sphere of our lives. Okay, every unit, everything in this world requires maintenance and care and has schedules. And so you need to, for instance, it is said that most often you change your oil maybe for a specific mileage that the engine or the vehicle runs. You need to change your oil. But that mileage exceeds, but because the vehicle is still running smooth, it is like, why still go change? And once it's running, that's okay with me. It's an attitudinal issue. And we probably need to change that because it's even affecting our social fiber as a people. And so we convert that into everything, even maintenance of our homes, our structures. We probably don't care for, as long as it's giving me shelter. I don't mind. And the car, it's a moving deadly unit. A moving deadly unit. If you don't care for it, and imagine you are on high speed and your tire bursts. You are on high speed, your engine sees. You the person, what do you think? Yeah. And so that should give you that concerted effort to make sure that you are caring for that unit that you are driving along.
Okay, so let me pick my first caller.
Right.
Hello, Thomas from Takoradi. Precious morning, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Okay, Thomas, you can ask any question you want.
Yeah, please, I'm mechanic too.
Okay.
And I can, some of the others, how they are doing their oil. For example, some of us, we keep oil for them. And I read that 10 months, not to. I
Whether
use it. And most of them,
Okay.
okay,
I
I
think I
didn't
got
really get
something.
it, but okay.
Yeah, if I got you right, you are talking about most drivers request for 3-month change of oil.
Yes.
If that is what you meant, most of the lubricants, which is the oils, have different grades, quality standards. Okay, so for instance, there are some of the synthetic oils that can recommend 6-month change. Okay, there are some that can go even beyond 6 months because of the additives they have in the oil. It can withstand heat for a long period of time. Okay, so it can withstand the stress so that it can still maintain that viscosity. Viscosity is that ability of the oil to resist heat, pressure, and all that. So depending on the quality of oil you are using will determine how often you need to change it. That is why I didn't want to go specific in recommending, because product variation on the market now gives variant times of checks or change. So depending on which product you use, for instance, there are some products I can recommend. Here again, they need to see you for sponsorship, so we can begin to mention their product brands on air. You understand? So there are some of the products that have very high quality additives that can really take you across 6 months. If you use a lower grade oil brand, then you are looking at 1 month or 2 months, 3 month interval of change. So depending on which product brand you are using in changing your oil would depend on how often or how long mileage you need to cover before changing. Okay. So maybe I'll use this platform to recommend to transport product sellers and people in the transport car industry who have products they want to market to see Precious TV for sponsorship, so we can begin to use this opportunity to market them.
Great. Okay, so as you were talking about that, it just came to mind. So someone who doesn't know about this and has just got to know about this, but because we can't mention brands, if the person is even using the synthetic oil, okay, can you give the person a duration, maybe say 3 months, maybe say 4 months, so you change?
Right. What happens with that? Synthetic oils are one of the high grade oils that you cannot, if you change it after 3 months, you are wasting it.
Oh.
Yes. If you change it less than 6 months, probably you're wasting it because it can still be very active in operation. Okay. It can still, but if it is a non-synthetic oil, then you require that very frequent, probably every month, depending on how frequent you also use the car. Okay. If you heavily use the car and you are using a low grade oil, probably you need to change your oil every month or every other month. But when you are using synthetic, it's usually prescribed on it how long or you can use in terms of mileage you can cover before changing it. And so if you cover that mileage within a short time, fine, then you can change. But if you don't cover it within that short time, it can take you for that long. So much of the difference is the high grade, which is synthetic, which is the high grade. And even within the synthetic, they have higher grades within the synthetic family. Okay. You know, so when you see the oil change technicians, they'll be able to introduce to you the various levels of grades and how long those grades can take you in terms of mileage or usage. Then you can want to adapt that for your engine. Exactly. So there are variant products on the market. And like I said, I'm itching for sponsorship to Precious TV so we can really let customers direct them to such products for them to use to really care for their cars.
Okay, Mr. Cecil, thank you so much. Today we learned about the transmission system. Next week, what are we going to touch on?
Next week, we're going to go on to the breaking down the fuel system, the air conditioning system, you know, all the various systems that,
Systems in the car.
so that at least when you're using the car and you're having a problem in this direction, you should be able to know. The air conditioning system, we have to pay a lot of attention to it, because most of the time people are using their car, the air condition, they begin to have hot air blowing in, and they say, I'm going to top up. But you don't really top up. Once there's a leakage, there is hot air, then that's a major problem.
Major problem. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel Awume. We call him Mr. Cecil. He is a car care expert, and he is also the CEO of Cecil Consult. He's here every Tuesday to teach us on how to maintain our cars. Today we learned about the transmission system of the mechanical maintenance of cars. Stay tuned. Mark will be back with you with a very interesting one. But Mr. Cecil, thank you so much for passing through.
You're welcome.
And we will be expecting you next week.
Sure.
Same time next week.
All right.
Mark will be back with you to take you through responsibility of the church and curbing social vices. Stay tuned.